Alright folks, I'm going to show you how to make a wonderful chicken vegetable dish. Call it soup, call it chicken and vegetables, call it whatever you want, but this is real quick, real easy, really simple. We're going to start with a bag of carrots. Just dump them in there. The way I like to do this is I like to have a layer of everything I'm putting in here. So you can see I've got one layer of carrots. So if you got a bigger or smaller pot, adjust to that pot. This is a 20-cup pot. And the way that I like to do this is I like to put my harder vegetables on the bottom. So we got carrots. I'm going to put some radishes in here. If you've never had cooked radishes, you are really missing out on something that's really great. You'll never get the radish taste in here once you cook this up. It's just going to be a wonderful vegetable that's in here. And again, if you don't like radishes, you can still cook with them because they are wonderful cooked. First time I ever had cooked radishes, just a whole bag of radishes cooked up, and no clue they were radishes. They were just wonderful. So at any rate, put some radishes in here. I just cut them into kind of bite-sized chunks. And again, harder vegetables at the bottom. I don't know if that really makes a difference on these Instapots or not, but I'm just old school, and you know, normally when you cook stuff in a pot, the heat comes from the bottom first. So your carrots and your radishes and things like that are going to get cooked a little longer than the stuff up at the top. Pressure cooking, probably not as applicable, but I still just do it that way. Alright, I got 2 more radishes here. Don't quite have a whole layer, so I'm going to put these last 2 in here. Make sure you check these, make sure they're clean. If anything looks like dirt, cut it off or wash it or whatever, because otherwise you'll end up with you'll be eating this and taste a piece of sand, and that's just no good. Alright, so we got some radishes in there. I like to put turnips in here, but I couldn't find any turnips, so I bought parsnip. Now, if you're not familiar with parsnips, it looks like a carrot, but it's not a carrot. It kind of has an anise or licorice flavor to it. So if you're not familiar with it, you might want to skip this. And again, just put them into bite-sized chunks. You get here towards the end, you might want to slice it down the middle. Alright, and then cut it up. Makes it a little bit easier. And again, if you put whatever vegetables you like to eat in here. If it's certainly during the summertime, if you're getting stuff out of the garden, that's what you want to use in this. But pretty much whatever vegetables you like, just plan on using one of each, or a layer, or whatever. We're not going to give you how many cups or nothing to use, because again, I'm going off kind of a layer method. Alright, so we also have some garlic here. Now, if your garlic has, I already got the stuff that's clean, so I don't have to break it out of that shell, but if you got the ends on here, I usually cut those off. And then if it's a bigger clove of garlic, cut that into like 2 or 3 pieces. So on this stuff, maybe I'd say, you know, half bite size. Maybe the size of a pea, about the same mass as a pea, maybe, is kind of what I'm going for here. Obviously, again, check it for any bad spots. Cut those off, and I'm putting in a handful of garlic. So you can see here, I've got a bad spot on there. It's got a little bit of mold on it, so I'll cut that off. If you don't like garlic, again, when you pressure cook this stuff, it is going to be amazing how you get rid of some of those sharp flavors like parsnip or turnips or radishes or garlic, right? So I like to put a good healthy handful of garlic in here. You could skip it, again, if you really hate garlic, but I'd recommend trying it at least once because you're going to be surprised at how good it tastes. And it tastes different than if you were just putting raw garlic in your mouth and chewing it. Alright, so I got some onion here. I like to use, these are sweet onions. I like to use at least 2 mediums or 1 large. Again, depends on how much you like onion, but again, this is going to cook down and be really, really good and savory. So I like to slice my onion like this, and then I'm just going to come in and make cuts towards that inside, towards the center, and that's going to leave me with pieces that, you know, again, are kind of bite size, right? I don't have to worry about dicing my onion. And again, you'll have a hard time finding an onion in this, something that looks like an onion when you're done cooking this. This is all going to cook down and almost just turn into mush. Now, I'm going to cook this with chicken, and I like to do this for about an hour, 45 minutes, an hour in the pressure cooker if I'm doing chicken. If I'm doing, this is also wonderful with sausage, your favorite brand of sausage. Put it in, again, cut it into bite-sized pieces, put in here, and it is absolutely to die for because the grease from the sausage comes out and really flavors everything. You do it with chicken, it's not as flavorful because it doesn't have, you know, you got chicken fat, but it's not as flavorful as sausage grease. So again, we got a nice layer of onion, which is what I'm looking for. So I'm going to put some green bell pepper in here. Normally I use a whole green bell pepper. In this case, I just don't have a whole one, so we'll use what we got. Again, cut these into bite-sized chunks. The seeds, it doesn't hurt if you put seeds in there. I kind of like the seeds. They, again, have some flavor to them. And I just cut these into strips, and then again, just kind of cut it real quickly into bite-sized pieces. And you do this, it makes for really fast work. It does not take long at all to prepare this dish. So at any rate, again, putting in the crunchier stuff towards the bottom. Oh, so I was talking about cooking time. I usually like to cook a little bit longer for chicken. Now, these green beans here are past their prime. They're kind of turning a little brown and stuff, but they're still good. They're not slimy or anything. So I'm going to dump those in there and again spread them around. So we're going to put some celery in here too. I cut the ends off to freshen those up, and then usually just cut the bottom off here, and then I'll rinse this. The reason I rinse it is because you can see there I've got dirt. On the inside there's more dirt. I don't want to eat that. It's typically sandy and I don't like it. So make sure you rinse off your celery. All right, so now that I got my celery rinsed off, normally you just have to rinse off the outer ones. The inner ones are usually pretty good about not having dirt in them. But if you see any dirt, wipe it. Make sure you wipe it off or rinse it again. So I like to take my celery and grab it and just take a good serrated knife, and you can just chunk off, again, bite-sized sort of pieces. Again, you're going to have a hard time finding a piece of celery in this once it cooks down, because the celery is going to break down and just get really mushy if you cook it for an hour. Now, if you like your vegetables a little firmer, you know, you could cook your chicken maybe for 30 to 45 minutes if you wanted to. Just make sure that it's done all the way. I think it should be. If you're using sausage, you know, you could easily use 15 minutes because your sausage is already cooked, and if you like your vegetables more firm, 15 minutes is going to give you firmer vegetables. Once I get down to these end pieces, it's kind of hard to hold and cut, so I'll normally kind of cut these individually. Now, if you had a chopping board, you're certainly welcome to use your chopping board. All right, so we got a layer of celery. We got some bok choy. I'm going to put some of this in there. the green leaves really, you know, you don't have to worry about cutting them into bite-sized pieces, because again, they're going to break up and kind of disappear. This piece has already had some of the outer pieces taken off, so I'm just going to cut that bottom off, check, make sure I don't have any dirt in there, and I don't. And then again, just kind of do this like the celery. Just chop it off with your, this is just a steak knife, it's not anything special. Not a special kitchen knife or nothing. Just a regular old serrated steak knife. And so now we got a nice layer of bok choy. Now I like to put zucchini in here. Zucchini, again, you're going to have a hard time finding anything that looks like a chunk of zucchini, but it has such a wonderful taste. And if you cook it for, you know, a shorter amount of period, you'll be able to see the zucchini slices. If you cook it for an hour, it's just going to turn again to mush. But again, it depends on, you know, do you call this chicken and vegetables and you want to be able to see your vegetables, or do you call it chicken soup and everything just kind of turns to mush and you're happy with that? You obviously adapt this cooking method depending on what you like. So anyway, so we got a nice layer of zucchini in here. Now, I don't always use tomatoes, but you can, and if you do, I like to cut mine in half, again, because I don't want a whole, you know, grape size thing of tomato skin in my mouth chewing on that. So I like to cut them in half, that way the tomato skin, which is probably going to hold up and still be identifiable as a tomato skin, I don't have a whole sack of that in my mouth trying to chew it up. So I'll put in a handful or two of tomatoes. Again, just kind of create a layer. If you don't like tomatoes, don't add tomatoes. This is all about your favorite vegetables and some chicken. Alright, so I'm going to stop there with the tomatoes, and so the last thing I'm going to add is my chicken. Now, when I add my chicken, I like dark meat. I get the boneless or the skinless chicken thighs, and I turn it to where what I call the grain of the chicken is up, right? So that's the outside of the thigh, and I like to slice these. Now I don't worry about cutting them all the way through to where they're all detached, but I do like to slice them because when I open this up after an hour of cooking, this meat's going to be very tender and fall apart, and essentially all I got to do is stab it with a serving spoon, and this all breaks apart, and then I basically got chunks of chicken floating around in like my soup. Now you can see that still holds together. It's not cut all the way through. You could do that, but you don't have to. But if you just score it like that, when you go to take it out and you stir it up, it's just going to be bite-sized pieces of chicken. You don't have to worry about cutting it so much on this end because, again, let the pressure cooker do most of the work for you. It's going to make this tender fall apart, and again, it's just going to stir up into bite-sized pieces of chicken. So again, just scoring it, not cutting it all the way through. You can see that it's all in one piece, really. And then I just layered it on top. Now, I normally like to sprinkle this with some celery salt because I haven't added any salt at this point. If you want to do that, if you want to put in some black pepper, you know, sage, thyme, any kind of seasonings, you could do that. But I'm going to tell you, if you just make this with just the chicken, so a little bit of chicken fat, and those vegetables, it is going to be really, really tasty. You know, I put salt on mine when I'm done, but if you're on a low sodium diet, you know, you could certainly just skip the salt. So we'll get the rest of this cooked up. Now, I showed my mother-in-law how to make this, and she questioned me about I was going over the limit line for the pressure cooker on how far to fill up this pot. And I'm certainly not going to tell anybody to ignore any kind of safety rule, but what I told her was, in my mind, the way the pressure cooker works is you build up enough steam, and then it pushes on the little safety valve and causes it to close, right? Well, if I had a piece of food, let's say I was cooking beans or something, right? The classic plug up a pressure cooker and explode vegetable. If I was cooking beans, the way it would work is if it plugged up that pressure hole, I would just be pressure cooking. The pressure would build up, and that would be the end of that, right? It would be the same as the valve closing. Now, I don't know if there's, so they've got another valve on there where I guess if the pressure got too high, it could blow out. But I've never had a problem filling this up. But again, don't listen to me. I'm an idiot. Make sure you follow the safety directions from the manufacturer for the model of pot that you have. All right, I've got one little bitty hole here that still needs a piece of chicken, and so we're almost to the end as far as cutting our chicken up goes, which means you can stop listening to me babble on here in just a second or two. Get this last piece sliced up and on top. All right, so I'm going to press all that down. You can see we're not overflowing the top, but there's a little line in there somewhere, and I'm probably technically over that. Now again, I like to sprinkle a little garlic salt on top of this, and then the last thing we're going to do, I'm going to grab a glass out of the cupboard, and I'm going to put just a little bit of water in that glass. And I'm going to pour this in there. I don't need a lot of water. I just need enough for it to kind of cover the bottom, maybe 1/8 of an inch thick or whatever, so that it can build up some steam, because that's how my pressure cooker works. I could probably get by without using any water, but then the bottom of my carrots could end up scorched. There's certainly going to be enough liquid come out of those vegetables, which you'll see here when I'm done. But I do want to add just a little bit of liquid so that I build up my steam quickly. And with that, we're going to put it in the Instapot. All right. Put that. So this is the valve. I think if it built up too much pressure, this valve would probably open up. I'm not 100% sure that's how that works, but at any rate, it's got a vent location and a seated location, and it's weighted. So if you built up too much pressure, I think that would push this up, and it would vent. But we want this little button here to build up. We want steam to build up pressure, and push on that valve there. So again, that's kind of why I don't worry about something. If it pushes up on that valve, I really don't worry too much about it. All right, put that in place. We're going to turn it on. I'm going to push the pressure button, and I'm going to push the time till we hit an hour. Hit start, and we'll come back in an hour. All right, if you're new to using these Instapots, I do want to point out a couple things. First thing is, you'll notice those lights are just going around. The timer has not started. It knows I want to cook this for an hour as a pressure cooker, so it's going to wait until it builds up steam and heats up, and it closes before it starts counting my timer. So if you need this an hour, if you start this an hour before you need it, you're going to be behind, because it's going to take a certain amount of time for it to build up heat, build up steam, pop that pressure valve, and seal up, and then actually start cooking. The other thing is, when you're done, I usually I'll just turn it off, and it's going to take a while for it to cool down and that pressure valve to come off, right? So that you can open up the lid. When that pressure valve is on, you cannot open this lid, okay? There's a physical lock in there. It keeps you from opening the lid, so that way you don't open it while it's under pressure and end up with hot food in your face and burned. So you have to wait for that valve to go down. All right, so this is done. I've turned it off, and there's a vent thing back here that you can flip if you would like to let the pressure in here slowly escape. It'll let the steam come out until this thing right here, this little locking mechanism, pops down, and then you can open it. So if you just want to flip this way, it will let that pressure out. I'll turn it off so I don't have to talk over it. I slid this out from underneath the stove vent a little bit because otherwise all this moisture will collect on your exhaust vent or whatever is over the top of this, and it could get wet. Your light fixture could get wet, it could short out, whatever. You don't want to do that. So make sure that if you open this up, the steam is escaping into the room and not underneath something that you don't want to get wet. All right, so our pot's done venting. Our little safety valve is popped in, so we can remove this. Be careful, it's still hot, so you're still going to have steam come up. Well, it's really steamy. All right, so this is what we got. You can see all our chickens up here on top, but remember I told you that if you score it, you can just break this up with a spoon into bite-sized pieces. So I'm just going to go around, break this up just a little bit. You can see that my chicken's just in little bitty bite-sized pieces, and then you just mix it up. So you can see our celery is really tender. Our carrots are really tender. They're just they'll turn to mush if you stir this too much. And you can just kind of mix this up a little bit and serve it. It's good. Really good stuff. And if you got blocks of chicken like that, like I said, you just poke them a little bit and they'll fall right apart. So there you go, chicken and vegetables soup, whatever you want to call it. And what I like to do is I'll scoop this up with a spoon that's got holes on it and put it on a plate, eat it, and then when I'm left with just the juice here, I pour that, and then I'll actually use this juice to cook my top ramen noodles in, and makes my ramen noodles really delicious.